about to do a funny priming question about the Revenge of the Sith visual guide. Is how many of you know about the signature look of superiority? Yeah, I'm getting nods. Okay, some more nods, okay. So people know. He doesn't know.
I don't know.
If you come here to the Count Dooku section, maybe I'll show you here. You wrote here, the signature look of superiority.
I did.
And this image has been cropped out. And I'd say this is a pretty common meme, or people know about the signature look of
This
superiority.
format has it as a literal sticker.
Yeah, people have it as
Oh my
sticker.
God.
The signature look of superiority has taken on a life of its own. And you had no idea. This is like a Star Wars.
No idea. Those little items were so much fun to write. You just had to rack your brain on what you were going to say, trying to be clever.
Because it's very funny, because in a previous panel, you talked about how Tyrannus and Dooku was sort of an overlooked character. But this signature look has made him, seriously, this has made him, people know about this, they're like, this is Dooku's defining trait, is his signature superiority.
Right.
So you added that to him as a character.
Maybe I read about that as in terms of the actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the funniest thing. So here we are. So that was our funny start. But obviously, James has done a number of super important novels that I think we were talking about earlier sort of transcend the barrier of legends and canon, because they are so important and tied to directly the events of the movies. In the case of Labyrinth, Evil, Cloak of Deception, and Plagueis obviously runs through Phantom Menace, that it's sort of impossible to remove them from those experiences. So I think, round of applause for that. And another goofy question about Dooku, as many of us know, you had the opportunity to reveal the name Sheev as Palpatine's first name.
That's true, I did.
You did
Yes,
that.
it came direct from George.
Straight from George.
By the way, his name is
Sheev.
Sheev.
So I thought,
Like Shiv? That's why I wrote back like Shiv? No, Sheev. All right.
So I thought I'd ask you, do you have any idea what Count Dooku's first name is? Is that information out there?
I don't know.
And that's not a quiz, it's just no one knows.
No, I don't know.
Yeah,
We should name him.
We should name him. What should we name Dooku?
Yam?
His name?
Christopher Dooku. John Dooku. Wonka Dooku.
Sir Dooku?
His first name is Cal.
Count. Lord Count.
In current canon, his first name is Dooku, his last name is Sarah. And the planet is
Oh,
named after his
really?
family.
What?
Oh, I actually was in the Count
Is that true?
Dooku around. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't think I clocked that as a name, but that makes sense. Is that in Jedi Lost?
It might be,
Might be. Okay.
Oh, so he's Dooku.
He's just
He's
Dooku.
Dooku.
That's it.
Dooku.
Anonymous Dooku.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Or as George says, Doku.
Doku. I think he says Palpatine, so,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's weird.
Did you know that Everest Productions, a YouTube channel, used a video game engine to make a 2-part movie of the Darth Plagueis book that's 4 hours in total?
And that sounds like way too much time.
It only takes.
I did not know that though.
Well, I wanted to start to dive into something I noticed, and maybe we all share that experience in your novels, of the ethos of the way you format your chapters. So many books, I just thought this was interesting, so many books, it's 20 pages a chapter or whatever it may be, but you have some 1-page chapters. There's sometimes where, and it helps the flow of the novel in a way that I haven't really read a lot of Star Wars authors. Where does that come from?
Just has to do with how I think the action breaks down. Sometimes a chapter can be that short because you're just dealing with something very specific and just want the readers to just absorb that and move on. No real strategy at all. Just it's a feeling. It's intuitive. Yeah, I can't really explain why I do that, but something that comes out of the outline process too, because there's a lot of outlining that goes into these books. And sometimes when I look at an outline and the way it breaks down, I think this section needs to be a specific chapter, and that can be short.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about how, particularly for the prequel tie-ins, how you wanted them to feel like movies.
I do, yes, yeah, I mean, and I think, yeah, that may be fan service in a sense, but I think when we're reading books that tie directly into film properties, we want to get that feeling of experiencing the film, in our head at least.
And to talk about the first one, so you actually didn't start with Cloak of Deception, but instead with a Darth Maul short, I believe, that came out a few months beforehand. Saboteur, I believe, is the name.
Well, the first book I wrote was Hero's Trial.
Sorry. Besides the
Oh,
NGO.
yeah.
Sorry. Once again,
let me
before
see.
we switch it up, we're not talking about the NGO. We're doing a separate panel
Right.
about the NGO.
Darth Maul. I think I wrote that right on the heels of maybe Cloak. I didn't want to write it, but they kept throwing money at me. Yeah, I don't remember where it fits into the chronology.
But it sort of sets up the mining situation in the beginning of Cloak of Deception, and how the two mining entities have.
Oh, I remember why that happened, because that was going to be the first E short story that Del Rey published. I have to have some kind of plaque somewhere at home.
You have the first
I have a
ebook.
plaque, yes.
For that, I think that's
E-book award, because it was probably the only e-book that year.
Yeah, maybe. Well, when writing for that era, though, for the Phantom Menace, it's a couple years after, I believe. A lot of your books, like I already said, prequels, they sort of unpack the opening crawl, as it were, which is something that's sort of long been done. You were talking earlier, I think a lot of us here were at the panel about the Sith. Palpatine as sort of the master of the pivot. It's always pivoting, and it sort of seems like when you watch Phantom Menace, you're like, what is this guy's plan? He wants Amidala dead. Does he want this treaty signed? Does he not want it signed? But
Slippery.
he's slippery.
Yes,
But
very slippery.
when you write Cloak of Deception, it sort of seems, okay, this is how he always comes out on top. But from the starting point of Phantom Menace, how do you work backwards to, in specific, make that make sense? It's something that was commonly criticized. Oh, this doesn't make sense. But read it. There it is. It makes sense.
Well, I told you earlier that the way I got the commission for this book, it was just a question sent to me, what's the story on the Trade Federation? Obviously no one knew, so I had to start thinking about the Trade Federation, how they figured into this, and it just was natural that the Emperor would have a hand, well, not the Emperor then, but Sidious would have a hand even then in manipulating events.
Yeah. And when it comes to franchise work like that, and a lot of authors sometimes will work in conjunction, like the Dark Lord trilogy, certain things speak to each other. But you specifically have mentioned how you were, during the Clone Wars era, kept up to date on outlines of comics, on a lot of the novels.
Yes.
And what's it like to write, trying to keep all that in your head at once? Like, how do I fit this in here, this in here? Because particularly Labyrinth of Evil has a myriad of references to the other Clone Wars projects that make it feel super cohesive.
Where are the
I think if I have a talent at all, it's just being able to keep a lot of information in my head at one time. It's all short-term memory stuff that just can flood my mind with a lot of information, and that's what I did with Star Wars when I first entered with NJO. I had to read all the Bantam novels, all of the comics, and I was able to keep that in my mind so that when it came to writing, that material was already there. It was really easy for me to draw on. I don't remember any of it now. It's gone. But yeah, I think that the ability to do that is the thing that has kept me in the franchise, even perhaps more than my writing technique or my plotting, but just my ability to have all that information at my disposal.
Something else that has even went into your work in canon was, we talked about a little bit earlier, carrying forward these characters all the way to Plagueis. It does feel like one continuous story that you're just telling from different points of view, particularly around Phantom Menace. And, when you write Tarkin and Cloak of Deception, were you thinking about, this is what I might take this character if I had the opportunity, or were these things just came naturally?
I think that's all fortuitous. It just was lucky enough to be assigned or just given the direction to write these particular novels, and it was the same characters over and over again. So it wasn't really a plan when I was writing this that I thought, well, in the future I could use this. I never knew what my next book was going to be. That usually just came out of nowhere. Like I told you after this one was, what happened on Cato Nemoidia? Like, that was the question. And I had to figure that out for Labyrinth of Evil. So, but that wasn't a plan. I had no idea that was coming.
Yeah. To rewind a bit, I think a lot of people here know of your relationship with Brian Daley, the author of the Han Solo trilogy, and I want to talk a little bit about what it was like to either. It's obviously Alan D. Foster, right? Splinter of Mind's Eye. He's the first, Star Wars novel, but you were bouncing ideas off of some of the first Star Wars fiction that was ever out there.
Yeah, Brian and I went to see the premiere of Star Wars then, before it was A New Hope. I had just turned 30, to put my age in perspective for all of you. You were probably 10, 12. Yeah, it certainly changed the course of Brian's life. He came out of that film thinking like, oh my God, everything I've ever thought about as a science fiction writer is just now on the screen. And shortly after the film, he was given this commission to choose a character from a short list of characters from Star Wars. He chose Han, and he had a very short timeline to write these books, and he and I would just talk about plot points and characters, and so I was sort of with Star Wars from the very beginning. Never expecting to really be contributing to it, but a happy coincidence.
And I wanted to get into, so you are also sort of a world traveler, as it were, and you went on a few adventures with Brian.
Yeah, much to Brian's dismay. He felt that he couldn't turn it down. He didn't want me out there in Nepal or Peru or anything. He felt like, I need to go along with him. And he never had a good time. It was always, I was there for the adventure, for the scenery, whatever, and Brian was always struggling. He'd rather be home, turning out some great piece of science fiction.
And speaking of great pieces of science fiction, one of which you saw in the mall in 1983.
Oh, what he's referring to is we came back from a long trek, a 30-day trek up to into Tibet. And when we got back to Kathmandu, Brian was intent on giving our Sherpas some kind of party, and he went out to a video store, and he found a bootleg of Return of the Jedi. I mean, the worst bootleg you can imagine. Shot in a theater, with the camera going all over the place. And we brought it back to the hotel and invited all the Sherpas to come, and everybody sat and just watched Return of the Jedi. I know, the Sherpas couldn't make sense of what they were seeing, but it was a great time. We were all loaded and just having a great time.
Excuse me.
And
Keep bumping me.
those adventures, whether you're writing in Mexico or Guatemala, or how do you think that those travels impact your writing in Star Wars?
A lot of the locations have made it into the books in one form or another, whether it's Ethiopia or Argentina or something. I'll just pick a spot and expand on it and use it as a setting on a world or a particular place. So I think I'm really a frustrated travel writer. That's what I probably should have done. But I've been able to get some of that stuff into these novels.
That's pretty great. And then to ask a very specific question, because as I mentioned, you have written for Maul, Palpatine, Plagueis, and of course Vader, sort of and the Dooku, sort of all of the major dark side players in that era. Tarkin, yeah, of course. When you are writing the This Is Not Living chapter of Rise of the Dark Lord, are you familiar with that? It's sort of, no, maybe we'll ask this. Have you ever reread one of your own books?
No, I've never. No, I can't do it. I tell you what happens. I just open it up. I don't even want to do this. I will immediately immediately start rewriting. I would go, why did I write it like that? I should have done this, that, and that thing. The one thing about writing these books, you know, with a quick turnaround is like, I didn't have time to really agonize. But going back to these books would be agony. So I don't do it.
Well, then I'll take it to the audience for a second. You guys know what I'm talking about? So it's the
Yes.
chapter of Dark Lord.
Yes.
Yes.
Vader is going through all of these different facets.
It's amazing.
Very much still Anakin, and he ends each sort of soliloquy with "This is not blank," and the whole chapter ends with "This is not living."
Oh, I sort of remember that.
And it's like, to me, it's like one of the most beautiful like depictions of like Anakin turning into Vader this time, because especially lately and even in other books, the way that he's written in Dark Lord is still very much, oh, this is Anakin Skywalker in a suit, which isn't often the approach for Vader. It's very much the split personality. He's gone, Anakin is dead. You still chose to write him as the.
I'll tell you how that came about. I was at Lucasfilm, and I don't remember who I was with, but this person had just been allowed to put on the Vader suit. And he was describing to me what it felt like to don that helmet and to just be in that costume. And so when it came to Dark Lord, that's immediately what I thought about. This guy's experience in the suit. And I just transferred that to Anakin.
I don't know. I think it's super powerful. Like one of the like, whoa. And speaking of Dark Lord, because you have written for the light side, oftentimes you're always asked dark side. You've written for Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and some of your own original characters. Or
I have
technically,
original characters?
maybe technically, I think you certainly give them character. By technicality, they're not original. Roan, for example, Roan.
Mhm.
A Jedi who is struggling with.
Oh, yes, that guy. Yeah,
Tell
right.
me about that guy.
A Jedi that escaped Order 66.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that would make sense, that some Jedi might have gotten away, and that it would be a cool story to have Vader's first assignment be to hunt them down. I think that's been overwritten now about 100 times, but at the time it made sense to me. It seems like that's what Vader would be doing.
It's still, he still does that. If you squint, it's still, I think it works. Another sort of funny specific question. What did the directive come from Lucasfilm or from you to make Newt Gunray's Mechno chair one of the most important things in the entire saga? Because it's just like it's such an obscure, like you watch Phantom Menace, that chair is going to unravel Darth Sidious's whole plan.
I don't know, that's sort of like Tarkin's boots. There's certain things that I fixate on and that I just can't let go of them. So I think that probably came from me.
And it's truly like, when after the people, Revenge of the Sith is all happening, because Newt Gunray was kind of forgetful. Sidious's plan is coming undone.
There is room for humor in these books.
Yeah, I think so too. So Plagueis, obviously, one of your larger novels. Many people might not know that it was actually canceled.
It was canceled. I was even, it's a funny thing. I had written, let's see, what was I don't know, 8 books, and I was so confident of my outline. I was writing along. I was deeply into, even before I got the okay from George that this was going to fly. I'm writing, and I've got like 100 pages, and then I hear back from Del Rey, oh, they did not like that. That book has been canceled. And I was like, crushed. In fact, Howard Rothman, who was George's sort of lieutenant, said to me, you have no understanding of the Sith. And I kind of got it. I mean, originally I had Plagueis be a 3D chess champion. He had that kind of really interesting mind that could figure out games and strategy. And I was writing it in first person. I wanted it to be sort of a counterpoint to Mike Stackpole's I, Jedi. I don't know if you guys are familiar with I, Jedi. So I wanted it to be a Sith version, dark side version of I, Jedi. They did not like that at all. No first person, no first person. So, but I couldn't let go of it, and I just, I appealed to Howard. I said, look, let's sit down and talk this through, and had a really good meeting over a couple of days, and you know, George was involved in where it could go and where it couldn't go, especially in terms of Anakin's birth, Anakin's conception and birth. But they said yes, and I had a great time with the book after that.
Yeah.
So, worked out okay.
I actually wanted to ask about that. Sort of famously, or not famously, maybe in art, you know, super niche circle famous, but in an earlier draft of Revenge of the Sith, Palpatine sort of explicitly says to Anakin, though it obviously may be a lie, during that opera scene, that he was responsible for the conception of Anakin. And obviously in Plagueis, with the Force experimentation, and it's sort of left ambiguous by, as you said, probably directive.
By directive.
From Lucasfilm.
Mhm.
What was your take on that?
Oh, definitely.
That it was
Definitely.
intentional?
Oh, definitely intentional.
Okay.
Does anybody have a different opinion about that? Yes. He was born in the dark side.
Because it's interesting, your books, in reference to the Chosen One prophecy specifically, sort of read it as folly, as like this is part of a setting. Anakin in Labyrinth of Evil is pretty skeptical of, you know, the Jedi are wrong about this. Like, I think this whole Chosen One thing is kind of like nonsense. And, you know, Obi-Wan saying whether or not you believe it, et cetera, et cetera. Right? So your take on that, but it was sort of all a dark ploy.
Yes, that's my take on it. I think there's room for plenty of opinion here, but that was my take.
Very interesting. Well, and to build off of that is that if that's the Sith plan, once upon a time you were developing a book called the Tao of Force, as I don't know, could you go into a little bit? I'm sort of
Yeah.
the details are amazing.
This was a weird one. So, Del Rey had the license to publish Star Wars. Did Brian's books, did L. Neil Smith, Lando Calrissian, remember those books? Anybody? And Splinter of the Mind's Eye. And then, I don't know whether they weren't making enough money or they weren't willing to pay Lucasfilm, but they were going to surrender the license. They had one last chance to keep the licensing deal. And they came to Brian and myself, and they said, "Look, Brian, where would you take this story going forward? Write some outlines, and we'll submit them to Lucasfilm." And they asked me to write a book about the Force that was going to be not a novel, but just sort of an investigation of the Force. And my idea was to just tell a bunch of sort of fables or stories that wouldn't delineate the Force, but would give you an idea. And both ideas were shot down. George said that he never wanted to turn the Force into a religion, so he was against my idea entirely, and he has since, of course, turned it into a religion.
That's why I brought it up, because it's sort of
And Brian's, I don't know why they didn't accept Brian's story, which was kind of a take on King Arthur and the Knights, the way he wanted to bring it forward. It wasn't as, it wouldn't have been the sort of military science fiction of Tim Zahn. It would have been a slightly different thing, but those fell by the wayside.
Yeah, I brought it up in the context of its cancellations as because it's a religion, but even in the first movie, Tarkin refers to it as a dead religion.
Yeah.
They're the only thing that is left of their religion.
Yeah,
that religion,
yeah,
and
I
it's sort
know.
of explicitly in the way that the prequels developed it. I just like
I like to think that they just didn't want to work with Del Rey. We're going to move on to Bantam.
And of course, back. When you're writing as well, I find it likewise fascinating on the many things I've mentioned so far that you write as if this is someone's first Star Wars thing. A lot of your novels, you will describe characters that are sort of ubiquitous to most people, concepts, you know, particularly close conception. This is the Force, this is the way a lightsaber works. You know, is that coming from you or is that coming from?
That's coming from me. And I would like to think that every book could be an entry point. I've been criticized for that, also for bringing in too many characters from earlier novels, but I think I've always liked that. I've always wanted to feel like this was a really lived-in universe, and that everybody was fair game. Everybody should be brought in. Every mention of any event, it just brings it to, it certainly brought it to life for me, and I hope that it would bring it to life for readers. So that was my strategy.
And then another funny mention, this is more of a comment, because I don't know if you remember, but in Cloak of Deception specifically, you wrote an opera scene on Coruscant with Palpatine and a bunch of senators. It was Horn Free Todd, I think, which is sort of like, it's so close to how the infamous Plagueis opera scene is in Revenge of the Sith. Have you ever picked up or noticed any like, well, that's weird. I did this same scene at the opera with
No memory.
No memory? No memory.
I tell you, this aging thing is not fun.
Do you guys know what I'm talking about? It's like, when I read it now, it's like, whoa, this is super. Okay, this one, I would not begrudge you for not remembering, because it's
Okay.
so hyper-specific, but I think it's so super funny, is that in Hybrid of Evil, there is a protocol droid who they take from New Gunner in the beginning, and they sort of go along this investigative situation in the works of below Coruscant, and it's sort of implied that this droid, TC-16, I think is the name of it, sees Palpatine for who he is, and then tells C-3PO, like, the plot, like, he tells C-3PO, oh my god, man, like, the world is gonna end if you have no idea the dark things that are coming, and C-3PO's like, I don't know what that means. He turns to Padme, he's like, that weird droid just told me something crazy. Like, is that just like, is that a bit of humor, or is that meant to be ominous? And I was trying to figure it out.
It must have been humor.
You're right,
It's making me laugh now.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it must have been humor.
You guys know, yeah, like, it's right as
Okay.
oh my god, the world is ending, and C-3PO's like, I think Palpatine's a Sith Lord. It's like, very,
Sounds funny.
it is funny. Well, because it's sort of, to a serious point, because you brought it back up, canonized in quote-unquote Tarkin, that they sort of discovered that under the Jedi Temple, under is this Sith Temple, which I think is an idea that dates back to concepts for Return of the Jedi, is that right? Where that comes from?
I'm not sure. I think probably I was thinking of how Christians always built on top of Aztec temples, or how one culture always takes a holy site and builds on top of it, and that it might be interesting if that was Sith ground to begin with, and they made it holy by building the temple.
Because it's one of the things that's only mentioned a few times, but I think a lot of fans, including myself, hold on to that as like a super interesting piece of lore. Like, yeah, it's
It is a short story, right?
yeah. Well, speaking of which, you had mentioned how writing a novel about Palpatine from maybe not birth, but from his beginning to end was one of the few things that you wish.
I wish that, yes, I wish I had had the chance to do that. I wanted to just take the whole film trilogy from Palpatine's point of view. I thought it would be really interesting. And I think there would have even been a way to work in the ending of, the last movie, The Resurrected Emperor, Resurrected Sidious. It might have been really interesting to just do it point of view.
Because then in
That was the one Star Wars book I had left in me.
let's make
Give
it
me
happen.
the chance.
Let's make it happen.
No, too late now. That horse is out of the barn. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people, one of the, Palpatine is a good chunk of Darth Plagueis, so there is you did get to characterize
A little bit, but I think it would have been taking it, seeing his mind at work through, point of view, I thought would have been really, really fun.
Are there specific points in the Star Wars, story that interest you, that you want to see? Like, what is something you want to see from his point of view?
I wanted to take it right from the beginning when he dissolved the Senate. I thought, that would have been like, oh yes, I'm on my way. There are so many moments I think that would have been great to novelize in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, we have about 15 minutes or so. Also, I've been told that I've received a text from up top saying that, guys, we do have a silent auction, and it's at the book truck. It's the first booth inside the hall on the left. Go big, we're bidding off a big Grogu, I think. There's a lot of other prizes. Participate in the silent auction, support books, and we're here, we read. I don't know. I've been told to say that, so please give it a look. We got 15 minutes left or so I thought we would open it up to questions, because I've got plenty, but I'm sure you also have questions. So, back to you for.
Yeah, so going back to Plagueis, I'm curious whose idea it was to have Plagueis alive during the events of Phantom Menace. It seems like it's just Palpatine and Darth Maul, but
That was my idea. I just thought, I don't know why that struck me, but the idea that he was looking on, you know, in some of those scenes, I couldn't let go of that. And Lucasfilm, George had no problem with my doing that. And I thought it would just, you can watch the movie now and kind of imagine Plagueis in background somewhere.
Often you write a lot of these darker books, like darker toned books. Does that come from like specifically your style as a writer, or did Lucasfilm sort of pigeonhole you into writing more and more sort of dark pitches or outlines?
Good question. It doesn't come from my nature. I'm a very light side guy.
That's what kind of books you like to write?
I don't know. It just it just worked that way. I think after why? I mean, Unifying Force was not a dark side book. I don't know. I can't explain that one. But they just maybe they saw something in Cloak or something about the way I wrote Sidious that they liked. So when these other projects came up with like Tarkin or Plagueis, I was the guy. I was the go-to.
Yeah.
Hopefully this is not too specific, but earlier in your other panel you were talking about how Palpatine is obviously not very romantic. He's very committed to the dark side. Even in one of your books he tells Vader, you know, you need no other companion besides the dark side of the Force. So I've always wondered what the connection was between Palpatine and Padme's mom. It's just so odd. Like, he's like, it's just really creepy, and so it feels like out of character for him, but it just seems like there was something there.
You mean hinting that they had an affair?
No, I kind of thought maybe he ran to her house after he murdered his family, kind of laid low. He felt safe there. I don't know.
I don't really have a response to that. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm still trying to figure out how he had a son.
Clone,
Really? You got past all your issues and you had a kid?
Yeah, I was just wondering if, based off what I previously heard about the Plagueis novel, how far back did you know about the Sith lineage, like prior to who Darth Tenebris' master is and before that?
I was only really familiar with, you know, the previously published material. I read, you know, Darth Bane, of course. Tenebris was just my invention. I don't think I took it back before Tenebris that I can remember, in any case. I think that was about as far back as I went. But I was familiar with the lore that had been, you know, already fictionalized.
Because all I know is that Tenebris had a Twi'lek Sith master, and I think that's as far back as it goes.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's actually done